The small town of Rockwell was known for its slippy streets and quiet nights. Nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forests, it was a place where nothing much ever happened, until the strange signal began. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a faint hum that crackled through James Cooper's radio. A lifelong enthusiast of amateur radio, James had spent countless hours tinkering with old equipment in his basement, so he knew the hum wasn't interference. It was deliberate. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., the signal would break through the airwaves, haunting and eerie, as if whispering to him from some distant place. At first, James dismissed it as a prank or a rogue station testing its equipment, but something about the signal felt different. Each night it grew clearer, taking on a rhythm that reminded him of Morse code, though it wasn't any code he recognized. The signal seemed almost alive, pulsing with a hidden meaning. It unnerved him, and yet it drew him in. Every night he found himself tuning back in, compelled by an unshakable curiosity and a growing sense of dread. Unable to resist any longer, James set out to trace the signal's origins. Armed with a portable radio and his equipment, he drove through the empty streets of Rockwell, following the hum as it grew louder. The roads became narrower and the streetlights more sparse, until he found himself at the edge of town, where the signal was at its strongest. The forest loomed ahead, thick and dark, but James pushed on, his heart pounding. Something was out here, and he was determined to find it. The signal led him deep into the woods, where the trees stood like silent sentinels under the pale light of the moon. After what felt like hours of searching, he stumbled upon an old, rusted fence hidden by overgrown bushes. Beyond it lay something unexpected, a bunker, half buried beneath the earth, as its entrance sealed but unmistakable. James had heard rumors of old government projects in the area, whispered tales of Cold War experiments, but he had never imagined finding anything like this. As the signal pulsed louder in his ears, he knew he was standing at the source. Whatever was broadcasting that eerie hum, it was inside the bunker, waiting to be discovered. James stood before the heavy, rusted door of the bunker, his breath catching in his throat. The signal was stronger here than ever, vibrating through the very air around him. His radio crackled ominously, as if the signal itself was warning him to stay away. But James was beyond caution. His curiosity had become an obsession, and he couldn't turn back now. With a grunt, he forced the door open, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. The stale air hit him like a wave, thick with the scent of damp and decay. The bunker's interior was pitch black, save for the beam of James' flashlight, which cut through the gloom to reveal a long, narrow corridor lined with cracked concrete walls. The place felt abandoned, but something about it was wrong. The deeper he ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The signal's intensity was almost unbearable now, echoing through the walls like a disembodied voice. At the end of the corridor, James found a large room filled with rows of outdated radio equipment, broken chairs, and dust-covered consoles. Most of the machines were dead and silent, but one console in the corner still hummed faintly, its light flickering weakly. This was the source of the signal. Heart pounding, James approached it cautiously. The equipment was old, archaic, but it was still broadcasting on a frequency that modern radios had long abandoned. As he examined the console, something caught his eye. An old stack of documents, yellowed with age. The words Project Midnight were scrawled across the top in faded ink. James' hands trembled as he flipped through the brittle pages. The documents detailed a secret government experiment, long forgotten, designed to manipulate the public through subliminal radio signals. What he had stumbled upon wasn't just a relic of the past. It was the remnants of a sinister project that had been buried beneath Rockwell's quiet facade. James glanced at the console again, feeling a chill run down his spine. The bunker wasn't just an abandoned facility. It was a graveyard of forgotten technology, and the signal still pulsed through it, as if the project had never truly ended. James sat on the cold floor of the bunker, surrounded by old papers that told a chilling story. Project Midnight had been an experiment in mind control, using radio waves to influence the thoughts and behaviors of civilians. The signal he had been tracking for weeks wasn't just random noise. It was a vestige of a covert operation designed to manipulate the masses, broadcasting from this very bunker. According to the documents, the project had been abandoned decades ago after the technology was deemed too dangerous, its effects too unpredictable. Yet the signal persisted, continuing its ghostly transmissions in the dead of night. But why? and who had been left to maintain the system. As if an answer to his question, a low hum rose from the far end of the room, drawing his attention to a rusted door in the shadows. The signal grew louder, more insistent as James approached, his flashlight flickering. He pushed the door open and stepped inside a smaller room. The sight that greeted him froze the blood in his veins. At the center of the room stood a massive machine, its cables snaking across the floor like tendrils. Attached to it, slumped in a chair, was a figure, a man, his body withered and pale, his eyes wide and unblinking. Wires were connected to his head, and a pair of headphones covered his ears. James realized with horror that this man had been the last operator of Project Midnight. He had been left behind, a living test subject enslaved to the machine that now hummed softly around him. James staggered back, bile rising in his throat. This was the real cost of the project, human lives sacrificed in the name of control. The man in the chair was long dead, but the machine still functioned, broadcasting its silent influence into the world above. With shaking hands, James turned off his radio. The signal died instantly, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. But even as he turned to leave the bunker, James knew he couldn't erase what he had seen. The signal had been silenced, but the memory of it would haunt him forever. James tried to settle back into his life after the nightmare of the bunker. He spent his days pretending that everything was normal, but the images of what he had seen, the man in the chair, the cable snaking from his skull, haunted him. No matter how much he tried to move on, the signal's eerie hum seemed to linger in his subconscious, like a song stuck on repeat. Even without his radio tuned in on the strange frequency, he could still feel its presence, almost like it was whispering at the edge of his mind. Weeks passed and the silence should have brought peace, but it didn't. Instead, it was a suffocating quiet, the kind that gnawed at his nerves and made the shadows feel thicker. Then, strange things started to happen. His television would flicker in the middle of the night, playing static-filled channels that shouldn't exist. The faint hum of the signal returned, not on the radio this time, but through his electronic devices, his phone, his computer, even the refrigerator. It was as if the signal had found another way to reach him. Then, the letters began arriving. At first, they were subtle. Single pages slipped under his door with cryptic phrases like, "You are not alone," or "The signal never stops." He thought these were pranks, maybe from someone who had caught wind of his bunker discovery. But each letter felt deliberate, as if somebody was monitoring his every move. The handwriting was erratic, almost mechanical, as if it had been generated by a machine. One letter in particular chilled him to his core. It simply read, "We are everywhere." James couldn't shake the growing paranoia. Every time he passed through town, he felt eyes on him. The friendly greetings from neighbors now felt loaded with suspicion. Were they in on it? Did they know about Project Midnight? One night he decided to confront his fears head-on. Retrieving his radio equipment, he tuned it back on the frequency. The hum returned instantly, stronger and more demanding than ever. But this time, there was something different. A voice, faint and broken, trying to break through the static. It was a single word, repeated over and over. "Listen." James felt the blood drain from his face. The signal wasn't just broadcasting to the world, it was trying to communicate directly with him. But why? And what was it trying to say? His thoughts spun in a chaotic whirlwind as he realized that the signal had never stopped. It had been waiting, watching, and now it wanted something more from him. Unable to ignore the signal's call any longer, James returned to the bunker. The eerie calm of the forest was unsettling, the trees standing like silent witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. The bunker's doors were still ajar, and the air inside was even colder than before. This time though, the bunker wasn't silent. The hum of the signal reverberated through the very walls, pulsating like a heartbeat. James headed straight to the control room, but when he arrived, something was different. The console that had once broadcast the signal now flickered with life, screens glowing with data streams that hadn't been there before. It was as if the entire system had come back online. His heart pounded as he approached the console. The word "listen" flashed repeatedly across the screens, accompanied by a rapid beeping from the old machinery. Suddenly, a new document appeared on the screen, one that had been hidden within the system's archives. Project Dawn. As James opened the file, he realized with a sickening dread that Project Midnight had only been the beginning. The true goal was far more terrifying. The signal wasn't just meant to control thoughts. It was a part of a larger experiment aimed at creating a hive mind, linking the consciousness of entire populations together. The signal was designed to act as a central control, with everyone tuned in to its frequency. The revelation struck him like a blow. Project Midnight had been a failure, but Project Dawn was alive and spreading. The subtle hum that James had been hearing in his devices wasn't just a lingering effect. It was a signal expanding, embedding itself in everyday electronics, searching for more minds to connect to. Every person in Rockwell, maybe even beyond, could already be affected. Before James could fully grasp the implications, the screens began to glitch and a new phrase appeared. "You are one of us." His blood ran cold. All this time, the signal hadn't been trying to manipulate him. It had been trying to bring him into the network. He wasn't just an observer, he had already been part of the experiment. Suddenly, the lights in the bunker flickered and the hum reached an unbearable pitch. James stumbled back, clutching his head as the sound seemed to drill into his mind. Then, just as quickly, everything went silent. The bunker powered down, the lights flickered off, and the signal cut out. James stood alone in the darkness, breathing heavily, unsure of what had just happened. But the final message on the screen had made one thing clear. The signal wasn't gone. It was still out there, growing stronger, connecting more people, and now, James was a part of it. As he left the bunker for the last time, James couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of dread. The mystery of the signal wasn't solved, it had only been deepened. He had uncovered the truth, but it wasn't over. Somewhere in this quiet hum of the town's electronics, Project Dawn continued, its influence spreading silently, and there's no telling how far it would go.